No.
Senator Vidak is going to present on item number 2015-111, California High-Speed Rail Authority. You may proceed, Senator.
Mr. Chair and members, thank you. I respectfully request that the Joint Legislative Audit Committee approve an audit to fully examine the California High-Speed Rail's Authority's use of flash appraisals. This audit should also fully examine the tactics the Authority is using to pressure property owners into to accept undervalued acquisition offers. I have heard from dozens of property owners, many of whom are farmers, small businessmen, and homeowners with properties that have been in the same family for several generations and are victims of these flash appraisals and pressure tactics. You will hear from many of them today. I appreciate the committee's consideration of this matter.
Thank you very much. Madam Auditor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Mr. Vidak indicated, this will be looking at the High-Speed Rail Authority and its contractors. It's our understanding they contract for many of these services. So the first objective is to look at their policies and procedures with respect to acquiring private property for the high-speed rail project. In addition, determine whether the authority and its contractors were following applicable requirements with respect to conducting appraisals and offering property owners just compensation for their particular property. Certainly looking at procedures with respect to offering the property owner the opportunity to accompany the appraiser as the individual is viewing the property and identify the number of times property owners were afforded that opportunity, took advantage of that opportunity, and certainly if there were times where that did not occur, Senator Vidak is asking us to identify that as well. For acquisitions involving a portion of a property, we've been asked to look at whether or not those appraisals required statements of either damages to the property because of the portion that has been acquired, or perhaps benefits to the property, to the remaining property. So looking at that as well, rather than just in instances where the entire property is potentially acquired, there may be instances where it would be a portion of the property. So he's asking us to look at that as well. With respect to the authority establishing an amount, again, I mentioned just compensation. It's my understanding that is terminology that's used, and that is part of the procedure and protocol that the authority and its contractors should be following when appraising property and identifying the amount that they intend to offer the property owner. Also, he's asked us to look to determine whether or not there have been problems identified with this process, and if so, what has the High-Speed Rail Authority done to address those particular issues, and what advice or guidance have they given to any contractors that they have been working with and continue to plan to work with in the future. And then the final objective is looking at determining, to the extent possible, if there have been instances where the authority has really taken coercive action to pressure property owners to accept offers for their property. So a few objectives, very specific scope as far as looking at appraisals and the process that the authority and its contractors is using to acquire properties or portions of properties. The audit budget is about 2,800 hours. That would take us about 7 months to complete.
Mr. Chair, I move approval.
Motion to move, and it's been properly moved in second. Thank you very much. We want to call up the affected agencies or agent.
Do I have any? Can I have some witnesses speak?
Sure. Right after the affected agency come. Yeah, right there at the table.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Jeff Morales, Chief Executive of the High-Speed Rail Authority, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'd like to make 3 quick points and then respond on some of the substance of the issue. First, I do want to make it very clear to the committee that should you approve the audit, we will comply and cooperate fully with the auditor. I think Ms. Howell will attest to our cooperative nature and our effectiveness in responding to previous audits. Secondly, I do want to point out we have provided the committee with with some background material and with specific responses to the questions raised by Senator Vidak. You have those in front of you along with some supporting materials. Third, I would just point out also that the BSA has just recently, within the last month, completed an annual compliance audit of our compliance with federal requirements attached to our grant funding that include right-of-way requirements, federal requirements, and made no findings in this area. On the issue of right-of-way, I just want to address a few points somewhat quickly. One, and probably most importantly first, there seems to be a misperception that the High-Speed Rail Authority has unique authorities or abilities with regard to right-of-way that are separate from other state agencies, and that's just not the case. As made clear in the auditor's analysis presented to the committee, we are governed by federal and state laws that govern property acquisition by all other agencies. We do that in cooperation and with the oversight of shared responsibility with the Department of General Services, Department of Finance, and the Public Works Board. All appraisals are conducted by state licensed appraisers. Appraisals and just compensation levels must be approved by DGS, by Department of Finance, by the Public Works Board under state requirements. So again, we are not out there setting levels by ourselves. And that process, the process that is used, again, which is a standard process used by other agencies, provides property owners with multiple levels of protection to ensure that they receive just compensation for their property. And if they believe that is not the case, again, they have multiple levels of protection up to and including a jury trial, which is standard in all property acquisition cases. That information, that is made very clear to property owners. It's in materials which we've provided to the committee, which explains the process and very clearly lays out that is available to property owners. Lastly, I'd just say we fully understand and appreciate that property acquisition can be a very difficult process, and particularly when you're talking about properties that may have been in a family for years or generations. And we don't discount that at all, and we fully accept that. But I would just point out that we have conducted through, again, the process with DGS, Finance and Public Works Board, over 1,000 appraisals. We've made over 800 first written offers, and are approaching 200 properties obtained through that process, none of which have had to go through the eminent domain process, which means we've worked cooperatively with the property owners. And you will hear certainly from some property owners who are not happy. I would also say we have multiple dozens of letters from property owners going through the process who have expressed appreciation for the process. We'd be happy to provide those for the record for the committee as well, just so you understand there are two sides.
Thank you very much. We have some witnesses. Senator Vidak, would you please have them? If you could please state your name and brief comments. Whoever wants to go first.
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay, thank you.
My name is John Toss. Reside in Hanford, California, and our family farms in Fresno and Kings County. And our lives changed in January of 2010 when we were informed that the rail would be going through 7 of our properties. And so in the last 5 years or so, we've been dealing with this. But the issue now comes down to we are not being talked to about the pertinent issues that involves our ranches. And the very first ranch that they sent a proposal out or an offer, and we had never been talked to before. And according to Mr. Morales, there's a lot of conversations going on and what have you. Well, we missed that. One of the people from the rail called and said, we would like to meet with you to go over this property. And I said, that's fine, but we're in the middle of harvest. Could we wait till after November the 1st of 2014? He didn't say yes or no, but in the middle of November, here comes this big packet of the proposal, escrow to start, the new grant deeds, the whole ball of wax. And we weren't prepared for that because we had not met with the appraisers. We hadn't met with anyone. And here this proposal was. So I went through it and came up with about 50 questions that I submitted to the man that proposed that. And to this day, we're still working on that. In fact, he hasn't answered any of them. And so we're at a process right now, just on that one piece of property. There's 2 more pieces of property that we own that we're in the same deal. He's come out on one of them, but these appraisers are not familiar with farmland. They are not asking the right questions. Okay. And we have 4 other parcels that have long-term leases. And they don't know what we're talking about. And so the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. They don't know what they're doing. They're not professional in trying to get to a reasonable outcome on this.
Thank you very much. Are there others who would like to make a few statements?
Stan Philippe, and I'm from Hanford also.
If you can move the microphone closer to you so we can pick up. Thank you.
Third generation farmer. My grandfather come to this ranch in 1932, and I didn't know anything about the high-speed rail until last Thanksgiving. We went to my oldest son's house for Thanksgiving. The following day, we took off and went to Truckee. I got another son who lives in Truckee, and on the way back is when we started getting packets in the mail. Never expected this, never knew nothing, and finally a representative of the high speed came. He called himself real estate specialist or something like that. Was talking to me and my wife, and he told us that he understood what we were going through and how it was, but because he had a piece of retirement property also. And that's when we got upset and we said this was not retirement property. This is how we make our living. We've been there a long time, and so pretty soon I'm headed to court for public domain. And I got an attorney, and they finally pulled it because I didn't have any feed on this. They never asked me anything, never done nothing. Until Thanksgiving, we never even knew the train was there. So they came out, they finally staked the ranch. So now we have an idea where the train is going, and then since then they've come back, and I talked to 3 people. One is appraiser from Texas, which I don't think he's ever seen a pistachio tree, but anyway, I asked him, I says, I don't know how did they do this appraisal, who did it, and when did they do it? And he said he did it. And I said, well, how'd you do it? He said he was on the road with a pair of binoculars. They didn't have any idea where my well was, where my pipelines are, my return lines, my electric lines, or anything. They're going to cut 60 acres in 2. I'm not going to be able to get water to the west end, and it's a problem. And they told me that they would buy that from me also. That would go into a land bank. Well, I'm not in business to. These trees are 3 years old. I didn't plant them so that they go to a land bank so somebody else could buy it, and that money would go to the train. So that's what got me all upset. I haven't heard back from them, so I don't know what the appraisal is going to be or what they're going to do. But they didn't have any turn rails. There's just a lot of things they didn't have.
Sure.
And I'm talking to neighbors, and they're saying the same thing. I did bring. I'm not trying to bribe anybody. Some of my product, and what I want you to figure. Do you know how long it took to make that?
No, sir.
Pistachios. It takes 6 years before you get a crop. So this is not something that it takes a long time. Sure. And now I got some trees, 60 acres of trees. and a train's going through the middle. They're only 3 years old. It's going to take another 3 years before I ever get to this state, this part. So. I don't have
sir. No. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
I bet it's something that they're doing. That what we need is water, and they don't want it. They don't want to get water, but they want to train.
Right.
Still pipes on the train tracks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would you like to make a comment, sir? State your name.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ross Browning. I live in Kings County, and I have a small ranch in Layton, California. And I want to respond. Well, first, I want to ask. I'm here to ask this committee to please consider a positive vote or an affirmative vote on the audit. The audit is needed for many reasons. One of them is I've heard here today that the auditors, the appraisers have been following rules and regulations in place. I heard Mr. Morales say something along that line also. This is not true. A month ago, I sat with a neighbor of mine, asked me to be there as kind of a witness when we were in front of a group of auditors, not auditors, but the appraisers. And the subject came up. Well, what are you going to do with my house? And they said, well, we think that it's uninhabitable, and we think we're going to take it, but there is no definitive measurement on how close you have to be to the rail for us to take it. Now, we've heard up to 500 feet. The people in Fresno County were told. So they said, one of the gentlemen said, we have just hired a person whose purpose will be to come up with a policy on that issue. Now, here they have been taking property for I don't know how many months, certainly 2 years, and they don't have a policy on how close a dwelling, a residence has to be away from the train track before it's considered livable or not affected by the train. I called yesterday to ask. I said, I haven't heard a thing. I'm kind of concerned. My mother-in-law lives up just about 300 feet from the train. The lady's 93 years old, has lived there most of her life. I was told by one person, well, they've just come out with a policy and it's 300 feet. Okay. That person's boss got on the phone and said, well, the policy is out. And I said, well, when are we going to see it? Why not make it? Is this a secret? No, it's not a secret, but the policy's out, and there is no magic number. We'll determine that on a case-by-case basis.
Sure. Thank you very much.
I think an audit is needed.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to our members, committee members. Member Baker.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Vidak, for bringing this forward. I'm pleased to support this audit, and I hope we won't look at this as a vote on high-speed rail, because this is not what this is about. This is about a fundamental right that if the state is going to take your property, we better get it right. And it affects families, it affects generations, income, home, and so I'm pleased with the way this has been structured so that it's not, do you like high-speed rail? I've got a long list of how I think the funds can be spent better. But what we really need to get right is what we're doing here with respect to the properties that this project is affecting, not only because it is a fundamental constitutional right that we have with respect to eminent domain and the responsibility of the government when it engages in that, but also because if we get it wrong, it's a permanent result. It's not like we can just give you the property back or compensate you, I think, in a way that will make you anywhere whole. So I am pleased to support this. Certainly urge my colleagues as well, regardless of the views about high-speed rail, to make sure that we get this process right as best we possibly can, and I strongly believe this audit will do that.
Thank you very much. Any other members? Senator Roth.
Well, I'm glad you clarified the issue with respect to the applicability of state law and taking and the right to hire your own appraiser and go to court to argue over the valuation of the property. It's my understanding that that process applies, sir? Yes. How many such cases have actually proceeded to litigation?
To date, none have. We have initiated. The eminent domain process can be initiated and negotiations continue throughout. The goal is to reach settlement without ever having to go to court. We've not had to go to court on any properties yet of the almost 200 that have been acquired.
And no litigation's been initiated?
No. We have initiated the proceedings that would lead to court if we are not able to reach settlement, but we have not actually entered into any litigation yet.
In how many of the cases have appraisers been hired by the other side?
I will have to. I'm not sure if we have that information. I will get back to. Everyone is entitled, as you indicated, under state law, and again, it's not a unique issue with high-speed rail. Anyone can request an independent appraisal, which is then undertaken at state expense. And we have had some of those. I don't have the numbers. I'd be happy to get those for you, for the record. So.
Well, I'll be supporting the audit request. I think it's important, given the sensitivity of this issue and the fact that folks' livelihood is at stake and the valuation that's attached to property is significant. And I'm not unmindful of the fact that typically the state would like to acquire the property for less, and the folks that have the property would like to have more, and there typically is a dispute. I'm a little bothered by the fact that there has been no litigation. I mean, there's some evidence that there's not much litigation, and we may not have a lot of appraisers hired on the other side, so I'm concerned about the educational piece here. And so I do think it's appropriate for the auditor to step in and determine for us whether the process that's being utilized is fair and effective and the communication is appropriate. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Jones.
For the high-speed rail, I just want to, the state or the high-speed rail authority has title to 200 pieces of property?
It's slightly, we're approaching 200.
Title and fee?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
This is a question for the authority. I am very, very familiar with what's happening with property values in the Central Valley because we were at ground zero when the housing crisis started. So a property that was worth such amount at one point in time is not nearly worth that now. So I am very concerned about property owners that might in fact even owe more on their property than it would be valued at today. So what if there is a scenario like that? How is that scenario treated?
And let me note, we have representatives from DGS and Public Works Board here who might be able to fill in on some of this. But basically, that is, again, part of the initial appraisal process where that can be taken into account. It is reviewed by DGS, Public Works Board, to look at those kind of issues to establish what the appropriate just compensation is for the property. And again, it can be evaluated independently by an appraisal at the owner's request and ultimately lead to a jury trial if there's disagreement on the value and what the appropriate value is for the property. We have property owners have absolute right to receive just compensation. The balancing, of course, is from the public side. We cannot provide a gift of public funds, so the process is geared to find the balance in that process to ensure that property owners are treated as fairly as possible under the law and recognize the unique circumstances. Often what happens on the appraisals, and again, if any of you have ever been through an appraisal process, everyone's got something unique about a property. And through the engagement process, we can resolve those issues. And we have many, many examples where by engagement by the property owner, we've been able to work through very complicated, difficult situations. One business in Fresno that has very unique, it's a produce company, very unique equipment and things that no one else has, can't be replicated necessarily. We were able to work through all of those issues and come up with a very satisfactory outcome. So the process really is geared to work through those kind of issues as we go through it, and again arrive at the end of the day at an appropriate level.
So if this audit were to pass today, would it delay the start of construction in part of this area? That help me to understand how this audit would impact what's actually happening today.
Well, as I understand the audit, and as we saw the request, it asks for specific questions, and I believe Ms. Howell suggested she might elaborate a little bit on those in order to provide a response. Again, we've been through, just recently been through an audit on this, on our federal compliance. We would continue through the process going forward. I don't believe it would have an impact going forward. It would ensure that we are doing the right things as we go forward. But we are proceeding. There are, I do want to point out, Mr. Toss in particular has absolute right to have concerns about his property, and again, we'll work through the process, and he'll have his day in court if that's what he wants to proceed to. Just so that the committee is aware, I do want to point out that Mr. Toss is a litigant against the project that predated the right-of-way process, so I do think that's important to note in this. But again, we will deal with his property issues on an individual basis and with all the protections provided under law.
Senator Galgiano, you complete?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Next week, I think we have, I see no further comments of the committee. We're going to move to public comment. If you have any remarks that you would like to make, please line up to my left to the microphone, and you have 2 minutes to make those comments. This item has already been moved in second to move forward with the audit. Anyone would like to, from the public, would like to speak? Going once, going twice. I see no public comments. We will close that section. Senator, you wanted to make one final comment?
Yeah, if I'd like to, could Mr. Toss respond also, please?
I'm sorry? We're asking you to close.
Okay.
And then we're going to move strictly to the vote.
Okay, yes, I respectfully ask for your aye vote here. We are at ground zero here, and this is eventually all going to come to your districts as this project moves. This is one of the largest projects ever in the United States, and as this project moves, it will come to your districts, and we are at ground zero. We are seeing the inability with the authority to work with the folks, and I think this really needs to be looked at. And so for all those folks between Fresno and Bakersfield that are really having a hard time, like I said, we're ground zero, and I really ask for your aye vote.
Thank you very much. We will move. A motion has already been made and properly second on this item. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Assemblymember Gibson?
No.
Gibson, no. Sargent?
Aye.
Sargent, aye. Baker?
Aye.
Baker, aye. Campos? No. Campos, no. Jones? Aye. Jones, aye. Nazarian? Rendon? No. Rendon, no. Senator Roth? Aye. Roth, aye. Bell? Cannella? Fuller? Galgiani? Lara? Laver?
We will keep that item on call. Next, we will have, I believe, thank you very much for your testimony. That item failed. We'll lift the call on item 2015-111, California High-Speed Rail Authority Property Appraisal. Secretary, please call the roll. High-Speed Rail.
Bell? Bell, no. Cannella? Fuller? Lara? Lara, no. Laver? No. Laver, no.
That item fails.